I remember that day perfectly, although my heart insists on wanting to forget it. The strong afternoon sun filtered through my apartment blinds, but I couldn't feel the warmth. What I felt was the biting cold of betrayal, a sensation that settled deep, like shards of glass in my chest. My name is Stephanie, and I'm going to tell you how a betrayal made me lose everything, and the paths I took to rise again. Cynthia had been my best friend since adolescence. We grew up together, sharing secrets, dreams, and even the worst nightmares. She was the sister life gave me, the person I'd call crying at 3 in the morning and who would listen without judgment. Our connection was so strong that I considered her an extension of myself. That's why, when the EcoLink project began to take shape in my mind, she was the first and only person I revealed every detail to. The EcoLink project wasn't just an app or a business idea. It was the materialization of years of work, sleepless nights, and every saved penny. I dreamed of it, breathed it. It was an innovative platform developed to connect small organic food producers directly to consumers, eliminating intermediaries and democratizing access to healthy food. I saw the potential not only for financial success, but also for social impact. I showed Cynthia the prototypes, market studies, and business plans. She listened to me with a sparkle in her eyes, and I believed it was admiration and pride for me. How foolish I was. One day, panic began to set in. My angel investor, who seemed so excited at first, started to dodge me. Unanswered messages, last-minute canceled meetings. A chilling feeling that something was wrong consumed me, but I tried to push it away, attributing it to my natural anxiety. It was on a rainy afternoon that fate, or the cruelest irony, delivered the proof. I was at my usual cafe, waiting for Cynthia. She had messaged me saying she needed to vent about something, but would only talk in person. My phone was on the table, secretly recording a conversation I intended to have with my grandmother later, to record her recipes. A silly habit, but one that became my salvation. Cynthia arrived, her demeanor arrogant. She barely greeted me, sat down heavily, and ordered a strong coffee. I felt a shiver. "Friend, what happened?" "You look different," I said, my voice full of genuine concern. "I'm great, dear," she replied, sending chills down my spine. "Well, I just came here to tell you something. I'll be brief." Her tone was as cold as a glacier. She sighed, picking up her coffee cup. "You know that project, EcoLink?" "Yes, my project," I replied. "Actually, it's mine. I stole your project. And I just sold the idea to an investor. He loved it." At that moment, the ground seemed to disappear. The offer was very good, so I signed the contract this morning. Let's be honest, I helped you, dear. You were never good at anything. I just made things easier. She continued, with a cruelty I had never witnessed before. How so?" I asked, almost stuttering. "Simple as that. We had a meeting, I presented the project, he loved it and bought it. End of story." I stared at her, perplexed, hoping it was a bad joke, a metaphor. But her eyes held no humor, only a bleak disregard. The sound of coffee grinding in the background, the laughter of people at the next table, everything seemed to disappear. The world went silent, and then a sharp buzzing filled my ears. "Stephanie, you always had it easy," she said disdainfully. "Easy? You must be kidding, Cynthia." "Yes, easy. Your ideas, your intelligence. I never had them. And now, with EcoLink, I'll have the recognition, the money. But rest assured, I'll make EcoLink take off. Soon it will be one of the biggest projects of all time. Thanks to me." My mind processed the words, but my body was frozen. The EcoLink project, my life, my future, stolen. And by Cynthia, the person I trusted most. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. The phone on the table, with its dark screen, continued to record every word. every confession of the cruelest betrayal I had ever imagined. Cynthia didn't know that, in her eagerness to vent her false victory, she had signed her own sentence. And I, in my despair, had found the weapon I would need to rise again. Cynthia's words continued to echo in me, even after she left. I stayed there in the cafe with the untouched cup in front of me, while the world spun endlessly around me. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief and pain. Cynthia, my best friend. How could she? The walk home was a blur. I arrived at the apartment and everything seemed colorless, lifeless. I threw my bag on the floor and, on an impulse, picked up my phone. The recording. That's when I realized my phone had recorded our entire conversation. Then I listened to the full recording again and again, to make sure it wasn't a nightmare. I pressed play and Cynthia's words filled the silence of my apartment. Every I stole, every empty laugh was a stab. It was a punch to the gut, a bucket of cold water that awakened me to the cruelest reality I had ever faced. That night, I didn't sleep. Rage bubbled within me, a fury I had never felt before. But along with the rage came despair. The following days were a fog of pain and inertia. I could barely get out of bed. Food lost its taste. The sun seemed gray. I felt empty, a vessel that once overflowed with ideas and was now hollow. The few times I dared to look at social media, I saw news about the market's new genius, the visionary Cynthia and her Ecolink project, now renamed ConnectRight. Every article, every praise, was a direct blow to my chest. It was proof that my life was collapsing while hers ascended on my ruins. The pain was unbearable, but something began to emerge from the ashes of my despair, a small, cold flame of determination. I didn't know exactly what I would do, but I knew I couldn't stand still. My life had been destroyed, but it wouldn't end there. The recording on my phone wasn't just proof. It was a promise. The promise that Cynthia wouldn't get away with it. The promise that somehow I would rise again, and that she would see it. And it was in that moment of total despair that I knew I needed to change. Not for Cynthia, but for myself. My first action was to shut off the outside world. I deactivated my social media, blocked Cynthia's number, and anyone else who reminded me of her. I needed time for myself to lick my wounds and, more importantly, to plan. It was no longer about blind rage. It was about strategy. I had the recording, and it would be my weapon, but not immediately. Not in an obvious way. I started to study. I devoured books on entrepreneurship, digital marketing, intellectual property law. I wanted to understand every step Cynthia had taken and how I could dismantle it. I spent hours in the library and online classes, absorbing everything like a sponge. My brain, previously focused only on creation, now became a machine for learning and analysis. I sought out mentors, people I admired in the business world but had never had the courage to contact. I knocked on doors, sent insistent emails, told an adapted version of my story, that of a talented young woman whose idea was stolen and who needed guidance to start over. To my surprise, some of them were interested in my passion and resilience. They didn't know the extent of my wound, nor what I was planning, but they saw raw potential in me. One of my mentors, Dr. Helena Miller, a specialist in intellectual property law, became an essential figure. She gave me the first advice that pulled me out of the limbo of pain. Stephanie, the best revenge isn't to bring down the one who brought you down. It's to build something so grand that their fall becomes inevitable by comparison. Her words echoed. I didn't just want to destroy Cynthia. I wanted to build something that would completely overshadow her theft. With Dr. Helena's help, I started working on a new project. It wasn't Ecolink, but something that evolved from it, much more complex, more comprehensive, and honestly much better. I used everything I learned on my study journey. I wasn't just creating an app. I was building a legacy, proof that creativity and resilience overcome envy and dishonesty. Months passed. While Cynthia and her Connect Right gained headlines, I worked tirelessly in the shadows. I developed more sophisticated algorithms, created partnerships with suppliers and consumers in a more ethical and sustainable way. My new project, which I called Connected Roots, was my redemption. Every line of code, every meeting was a brick in my new foundation. I felt I was regaining control of my life, and the pain of betrayal transformed into fuel for my ascent. The months of hard work had prepared me for that day. The launch date of Connected Roots had finally arrived, and with it, a dizzying mix of anxiety and cold determination. I no longer felt the searing pain of betrayal, but a scar, a constant reminder of what I had overcome and what still needed to be done. Revenge, for me, was no longer about destroying Cynthia, but about proving my worth to myself and to the world. But let's be clear, her fall would be a very welcome bonus. The launch event was modest, but strategically planned. I invited journalists from smaller, but influential technology and sustainability outlets, as well as investors that Dr. Helena and my mentors introduced me to. The hall was lit by soft lights, and the round tables created an intimate atmosphere, perfect for conversations. I wanted people to connect with the essence of Connected Roots, transparency, ethics, and a true revolution for small producers. I stood there on stage, wearing a simple but elegant blazer, my voice firm and clear. The insecurity of the old Stephanie was gone. There was a silent strength that propelled me. "Good evening, everyone," I began, the microphone picking up every word. For many months, I have been immersed in a project that is not just an application, but a mission. A mission to reconnect rural producers with urban consumers, eliminating barriers and bringing more freshness, more quality, and more justice to everyone's table. Connected Roots is more than an e-commerce platform, I continued. It's a tool for empowerment. It's a chance for small producers to have control over their prices and distribution, and a guarantee for consumers that they are receiving the best, directly from the source, with full traceability. It's true collaborative economy in action. I explained the differentiators, the geolocation system that connected the customer to the nearest producer, blockchain technology to guarantee the origin and quality of food, and the business model that prioritized profit margins for producers. Every feature was a direct response to the flaws I had identified in Cynthia's project, flaws that I knew she had incorporated without thinking about the real impact, focused only on profit. The audience was attentive. I could see curious faces, murmurs of approval. At the end of my presentation, warm applause filled the room. Some journalists approached, eager for interviews. "Stephanie, your project is truly innovative. How do you see Connected Roots in relation to competitors, especially Connect Right, which has gained so much visibility?" asked a reporter from a business magazine. An almost imperceptible smile played on my lips. It was the question I expected. "Connected Roots doesn't propose to be just another competitor," I replied, my voice calm but full of confidence. "It's an evolution. While other platforms may focus on intermediation or quick profit, we prioritize social impact, sustainability, and the appreciation of the small producer. We believe that true innovation lies in creating a fair ecosystem where everyone wins. Our technology is more robust, our value proposition is deeper, and our mission is more human." I didn't mention Cynthia by name, but the hint was clear. Connect Right was superficial, while Connected Roots was the essence. News of the Connected Roots launch spread rapidly. The next day, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Congratulations messages, interview requests. And I knew that, somewhere, Cynthia was feeling the first chill. Cynthia's Connect Right, although it had a grand launch and a lot of publicity, began to face problems. Users complained about a lack of transparency, abusive prices charged to producers, and bugs in the system that she, in her haste to launch, had ignored. She had built a house on quicksand. And now, my solid and ethical foundation was shaking hers. In a few days, Connected Roots began to gain momentum. Producers, tired of the fees and bureaucracy of existing platforms, saw my project as the solution they had long sought. Consumers, increasingly conscious, embraced the idea of fairer and more transparent consumption. It was organic growth, driven by quality and purpose, not by misleading advertising. I knew Cynthia was watching me. I felt it in the air, in the news that arrived, in the discreet glances at events I now attended. She must have been wondering where I had found so much strength, so much knowledge. The shock of my return, and with such a superior project, must have been quite a blow. The game had begun, and I was no longer playing to lose. I was playing to rewrite my story. The initial success of Connected Roots was undeniable. Positive articles multiplied. Partnerships with small producer cooperatives grew daily, and consumers embraced the platform enthusiastically. I felt alive again, every cell in my body vibrating with purpose. But, as in every ascent, I knew Cynthia's fall would generate turbulence. I was in a meeting with my development team, analyzing engagement metrics, when my phone vibrated with a news notification. It was from a renowned tech portal, and the headline chilled my blood. Plagiarism allegations surround Stephanie Thompson's growing Connected Roots. My heart raced. I opened the article. The text was vague, without concrete proof, but the insinuation was clear. Connected Roots was a copy. The article mentioned anonymous sources who alleged suspicious similarities with previous projects in the market, clearly a veiled reference to Cynthia's Connect Right. It wasn't a direct accusation, but enough to plant the seed of doubt. Rage engulfed me with an almost primal force. It was her. I knew it. Cynthia was trying to bring me down. She was trying to turn the tables, accusing me of the crime she herself had committed. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. My colleagues looked at me worriedly. "Stephanie, what will we do?" asked Peter, my head of marketing, his voice tense. "This could harm our image." "We'll do nothing immediately," I replied, with a serenity that surprised me. This is a planned attack, and responding right away is giving her what she wants, attention and a public fight. I knew Cynthia was in a panic. Connect Right was starting to show signs of failure. Producers complained about delayed payments, investors were losing confidence, and the media was already questioning the sustainability of her business model. It was the desperate reaction of someone who saw their own house of cards collapse. I ignored the article for a few hours, focusing on work. I let the seed of doubt hang in the air, knowing that the truth would eventually come out on its own. Meanwhile, I made a crucial call. I called Dr. Helena Miller. I explained the situation, the article, and my suspicion. Following my own instinct, I did not publicly respond to the plagiarism accusation. Instead, the next day, my team launched a series of detailed articles and short videos on Connected Roots as social media. They weren't about plagiarism, but about the project's creation journey. We published excerpts from my first drafts, algorithm sketches, photos of my initial meetings with small producers, testimonials from experts who had accompanied me from the beginning. We showed the prototyping process, the evolution of the concept, the market research that lasted years. I wasn't just refuting an accusation. I was showing my truth, my passion, and my hard work. In one of the videos, I appeared sitting at the same table where I had drawn the first schemes of the Ecolink project, with a cup of coffee, ironically, the same type Cynthia had ordered on that fateful day. "Many of you ask me about the inspiration for Connected Roots," I said, looking directly at the camera, my voice serene and honest. "The inspiration comes from the belief that good ideas are built with dedication, research, and, above all, a genuine purpose. No one builds something lasting without passion and without valuing every step of the process. I didn't need to mention Cynthia. The message was implicit. My project was the result of authentic work, while hers was a cheap copy. The public reaction was immediate. Comments and engagement were overwhelming. Transparency is everything. What an inspiring story. Cynthia can copy the idea, but never the purpose. The defenders of connected roots emerged. Cynthia's attack not only failed, but also gave me a platform to tell my story in a deeper and more humanized way, reinforcing my authenticity. The days that followed the failure of Cynthia's attack were intensely busy for me. As connected roots flourished, Cynthia's empire, built on fragile foundations, began to crumble at an alarming rate. Negative news about ConnectRight was daily. Small producers denounced delayed payments, abusive contracts, and a lack of technical support that bordered on neglect. Users reported persistent bugs in the app and a frustrating shopping experience. The articles that once praised Cynthia now questioned her management capacity and the ethics of her business. I remember reading an article where a market analyst compared ConnectRight to a structure beautiful on the outside, but without foundations. That phrase was music to my ears. Cynthia had stolen the idea, but not my process, not my dedication to detail, and certainly not my genuine purpose. Her investors began to jump ship. One by one, amidst news of vertical drops in profits and lawsuits for breach of contract, they withdrew their investments. The visionary Cynthia was becoming a burden. She was languishing under the weight of her own dishonesty. As Cynthia's fall accelerated, my mind was focused on a single goal: the moment of revelation. The recording of the confession, kept under lock and key on an encrypted flash drive, was my ticking time bomb. I wouldn't use it for a cowardly attack, but for a surgical strike at the moment of greatest impact, which would leave no doubt about the truth. I was planning something grand, to then reveal the truth to everyone. Connected Roots had been nominated in one of the main categories at the annual Innovation and Entrepreneurship Award. And, ironically, Cynthia's ConnectRight had also been nominated. The event would be televised, with the presence of big names in the market and the press. This would be the perfect opportunity to unmask Cynthia. I wasn't just thinking about humiliation. I wanted to show the truth. I wanted my story to be a warning to all who dream of building something with integrity and passion, and to those who try to profit from the efforts of others. The recording would be the final, irrefutable proof that honesty always prevails. The days leading up to the award were a mix of euphoria and an almost obsessive focus. I reviewed every detail of my speech, not for the award itself, but for the moment that would come after, the moment of my truth. I knew Cynthia would be there, trying to keep up appearances, perhaps even greeting me with her usual false cordiality. Little did she know that the stage she so coveted would be the stage of her own ruin. The air in the event hall was electric. The Tech Innovation Award was one of the highlights of the technological calendar, and I was there, not just as a nominee, but as the architect of a plan. My heart beat fast, but it wasn't from nervousness. It was from a controlled expectation, from adrenaline. Cynthia was there too, a few tables away, trying to maintain her composure while receiving empty congratulations from investors who now knew about the decline of ConnectRight. I wore a simple, yet elegant dress that made me feel powerful and confident. My eyes briefly met Cynthia's. She offered me a perfunctory smile, the same false smile I once considered genuine. I returned a nod. She had no idea what awaited her. The ceremony continued with speeches and awards in other categories. Every word, every applause increased the tension within me. Dr. Helena was in the front row. We exchanged a knowing glance. It was time for the Social Impact Startup of the Year category. The presenter gave a brief introduction, listing the finalists. Connected Roots and ConnectRight were the last two to be announced, in an almost poetic irony. And the nominees are... The presenter's voice echoed. The logos of the competitors appeared on the big screen, and then the two main ones, mine, luminous and organic, and Cynthia's, with its cold, corporate colors. My name was announced as the winner. Stephanie Thompson with Connected Roots. A wave of applause swept through the hall. I stood up, my steps firm toward the stage. As I climbed the stairs, my gaze met Cynthia's again. Her smile had vanished. There was a shadow of despair in her eyes, an apprehension I knew she didn't fully comprehend. I took the trophy, feeling the weight of my victory. The flashlight's glare was blinding, but I saw the attentive faces. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice clear and with the confidence I had earned. "It is an indescribable honor to be here and receive this award for Connected Roots. This project is the materialization of a dream, of years of hard work, and an unwavering belief in the power of connection and justice." I paused briefly, letting the words echo. I saw Cynthia in the audience, visibly uncomfortable. But before I talk about the future and the impact of Connected Roots, I continued, my voice taking on a new tone. I feel it is my duty to share a part of the journey that brought me here. A part that, unfortunately, is painful, but necessary to understand the true value of integrity. A murmur of shock spread through the hall. I signaled to the sound technician. "I have proof of this betrayal, the irrefutable confession," I announced. The recording began to play for the entire hall. Everyone fell silent, in shock at what they were hearing. The silence in the hall was almost deafening. You could hear every person's heart beating. The recording continued, with Cynthia's voice, full of envy and empty justifications. I looked at her table. Cynthia was standing, her hands covering her face, her body trembling. The people around her looked at her with a mixture of shock, revulsion, and pity. Her own investors and associates were moving away from her. Her mask had fallen publicly and irrevocably. "This voice you heard," I declared, my voice now cold and resolute, "is Cynthia's, my former best friend, who stole my initial project, the Ecolink project, and renamed it Connect Right. She believed she could silence me and steal my future. But what she didn't know is that the truth always finds a way." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my victory. The pain of the past transformed into overwhelming strength. This award is not just for Connected Roots. It is for everyone who has had their dreams stolen, their trust broken. It is proof that resilience, genuine passion, and integrity are the true foundations for lasting success. You don't build a legacy on lies. I refuse to be a victim. I chose to be a survivor, a creator, and a voice for justice. The applause started timidly, then grew, turning into a standing ovation. It wasn't just applause for the award, but for my courage, for my truth. I looked at Cynthia one last time. She was being discreetly escorted from the hall by her own associates, her face red with shame, her eyes full of tears, not of remorse, but of humiliation. Revenge was not Cynthia's destruction by my hands, but her own self-destruction exposed by my truth. I overcame her, not in a corner, but on a national stage, with the world as a witness. Connected Roots prospered, becoming a reference in social impact and innovation. My story inspired millions, and I became an active voice against plagiarism and for ethics in entrepreneurship. I was no longer the Stephanie who cried over the loss of a dream. I was the Stephanie who had rebuilt, stronger, wiser, and more victorious than I ever imagined. The recording, which once symbolized my pain, became the testament to my ascent. And in the end, the sweet satisfaction of seeing justice served, grandly and unforgettably, was my greatest reward. Thank you for listening to Stephanie's story. Tell us in the comments what you thought of this story. We'd love to hear. If you liked this story, Please like and share this video to support us, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories.